Welcome to the Gluten-Free Italian. We are on a Saturday night making a couple of gluten-free baked goods for Christmas. So the first one that we're going to do is what my mom used to call a 7-layer bar. I'm not actually sure there's 7 layers. We'll count them. But we're going to be making that one today first. And then the other one that we're making is actually an almond paste cookie. So they're almond cookies, and almond cookies are a big Italian tradition and treat. So we're going to be making those tonight too. We're going to start with the 7-layer bar. That's easy to put together, easy to put in the oven and get going. I've already started my oven. It is at 350, getting up there, and we're going to begin by melting 1 stick. And we might need another half a stick of butter. We're going to start with that. And then what we're going to do, after this melts, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use gluten-free breadcrumbs. So for both recipes tonight, we're using gluten-free breadcrumbs. We'll see. That's actually what we do. Now, the Italian cookies, my mom always made. 25. So the Italian cookies my mom always made, and they were always made with regular breadcrumbs, right? So plain regular breadcrumbs, which I never even really realized until she told me that. So we're going to be doing the same thing with the almond paste cookies today. That one's a little more involved because of the mixing involved with it, but we'll get first this one done and started and in the oven, and then we'll move on to those almond paste cookies. Oh, couple more seconds, I should say. So I hope everyone is having a great evening or afternoon. You've had a great Saturday. Been a busy day as always. I think everybody can say that, especially this time of year. It's kind of crazy how the time flies by. There we go, perfect. So we're going to start with 1 cup of melted butter with our breadcrumbs. So we're going to go ahead and we're also going to, I have to show you these little quick, they're so cute. Look at these measuring cups. I mean, you know what? If you're going to do Christmas, you might as well do it right? So I have our measuring cups, and I'm going to measure out 1 cup of gluten-free breadcrumbs. Put it in my dish. And then 1 more cup of gluten-free breadcrumbs. Because this is our base. So what I'm doing for this recipe, normally with this recipe, what you would do is you would actually have, I'm going to leave a little bit out. So we're going to do about 3/4 of a cup. You would usually use crushed graham crackers for this recipe if you wanted to go gluten full. But we're doing gluten-free, so we are doing the breadcrumbs. And what I found, interestingly enough, is that our breadcrumbs, gluten-free breadcrumbs, are a great substitute for graham crackers. So if you have a recipe that calls for graham crackers and you can't find gluten-free graham crackers because they're not always easy to find, then we can go ahead and you can substitute plain gluten-free breadcrumbs for them. Now, we could if we wanted to, but we're not going to. You could actually add some cinnamon to it if you wanted to, but this recipe doesn't actually call for it. It calls for plain graham crackers if we were going that route. So we need a little more butter, so I'm going to go ahead and get some more butter. As you can imagine, I was cooking earlier today as well. My son's going to be surprised when he gets home. And we're going to do, actually, I'm going to do another whole stick. Even if I don't use all of the butter, that's okay. I'd rather have it melted. And I don't know about all of you, but I always put a little lid for 30 seconds. I always put a little lid on my whatever I'm making just to be safe and make sure that it doesn't splatter all over the microwave. Okay, so we started with 2 cups of the breadcrumbs. As soon as the other melted butter comes out, Look at the sun. So my mother used to make this. I used to love this cookie. And she would put butterscotch morsels in it. And I'm not a big butterscotch fan anyway. So I stopped doing that, so we don't use the butterscotch. But you can actually use, I've done it with mint chocolate chips. I've done it with white chocolate, and I have some of those too we could add to it. But tonight I'm just going with a simple, plain chocolate recipe. So I'm using some bittersweet chocolates in it, and I'm using just the milk chocolate morsels in it. Hey, Lisa. And the other thing that is a main ingredient that we use in this is coconut. And you can use the nut of your choice, whatever nut you have hanging around. Go ahead and use that one. I'm using pecans today. So we'll be using pecans, and we're going to count how many layers we put in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the rest of this butter because I just don't feel like the bottom is moist enough. So we're going to add the rest of this butter. So we've got 2 cups of the breadcrumbs and 2 cups of melted butter. Definitely a rich recipe, as you can already tell. Get this in here. Oh, that looks fabulous already. And I'm using a glass baking dish so I can see, because I don't want the bottom to get burnt. Okay, so we've got our 2 cups. Mash that down. Very good. And the oven's telling us it's ready for this to go in. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to add a cup of our milk chocolate morsels. I bought the Giardella today. You can use whatever chocolate morsels you want to. So here we have, I'm going to start with a cup. How that spreads out. I'm actually doing this one from memory. Oh, that's very nice. That's perfect. And now we're also going to add some bittersweet morsels as well. I'm going to put a 1/2 cup and start with a 1/2 cup of those. Kind of fill in the gaps. That's what I do with it. So right now we have 3 layers so far. Awesome. This is what it looks like so far. The next ingredient is going to be our coconut. So shredded coconut goes in next. And I don't like to put too terribly much because I don't want it to be overpowered, but coconut is an important part of this recipe. Some of that on there. Make sure you get it in the nooks and crannies. Then our chopped pecans. So we're going to do 3/4 of a cup of pecans. La, la, la. Pecans are nice because they give it a nice crunch. The final layer. So we have the breadcrumbs. Then we have the white chocolate morsel, and not the white chocolate, the milk chocolate morsels, the dark chocolate bittersweet morsels, the coconut, the pecans, and now we're going to add sweetened condensed milk. That's the trick to this one. So I had a can open already, and it only has probably about 1/4 of a cup left in it because, of course, I already did one small one, just to make sure we had one done. Plus, it's always good. You know, Sarah, when was the last time I made this? Last Christmas. It's not like we make these treats all the time. But when I was growing up, I used to love to make these with my mom because I loved the sweetened condensed milk. It is so good. Literally, it's sweetened condensed milk. Delicious. Pour this can on here. And what's really nice when it's done, you'll see it has this nice caramelized glaze on top. It's just absolutely wonderful. Okay, so this is like a 9 by 12-inch pan or 10-inch pan. And this one right here, we used almost an entire can of sweetened condensed milk if you combine what we used from this one right here. So this is now going to go into the oven. Before you know it, it will be done. We have a few steps for the next recipe. Let me go ahead and clean these things out of the way. And then we will get started on the next recipe, which is the almond cookies. Okay, so for the almond cookies, what we have to do is we'll have to start with our eggs. And the recipe calls for 5 eggs if you're using 1 entire pound of almond paste. So you buy the almond paste at your supermarket. This one costs a little over $7. So you're going to probably pay somewhere between $7 and $8 per container for the almond paste. So this isn't inexpensive to make, but it's a very delicious cookie. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to start though. I'm going to open the package, but then we're going to start with our eggs. And we actually have to separate the eggs. We're going to take 3 eggs because that's a 7-ounce package. We have to meringue the eggs. We have to get them stiff. I didn't want to take them out until we were actually ready to get started. So here's 2 eggs. And here is my 3rd egg. And we're going to go ahead, like I said, and separate those out. And if you've never separated eggs, which I'm sure many of you have, I always liked to do it when I was young too, because it was just fun to me. So you take your egg, crack it, make sure you have enough of a shell that you can just go back and forth with it. Whoop, there we go. Very nice. Get all of it out, and then the yolk is going to go right there. There. So the longest part of this recipe, honestly, starts with getting the egg yolks, the egg whites firm. So we're separating them out. And here's the trick. Don't do anything with the egg yolks. So you can add them to the recipe if you wanted to. I don't usually. I did for a short today that I was taping, but okay, there we go. Wash my hands real quick. All right. Now comes the fun part. We're going to whip these babies into shape. And let me tell you, it can take a couple of minutes. And after we do that, we have to then add the sugar. Because, yeah, it's called the sugar cherry. This will take a couple of minutes. How that's starting to firm up already. Very nice. Okay. So we have that in there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start by adding our sugar. So we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Do 1/2 cup. Oh, and by the way, I got these from TJ Maxx. I am such a TJ Maxx person. I love that store. And these as well. These are little mugs. My son loves grabbing those. Little drink. Okay, so the sugar's going in. You blend the sugar in now. Now we're going to do 1/4 cup, 3/4 of a cup. And I'm not one who don't like things too terribly sweet, so I always do a little lap. And now comes the tricky part. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open. First, we're going to massage. Gotta massage it a little bit. This is the almond paste, and we have to like kind of mesh that all up a little bit here. Get that going into this. This this is the hardest part, is getting this almond paste in here correctly. So I'm taking, this is the log of almond paste that we're putting into our mixture. And you want to kind of flatten it out a little bit and spread it in little chunks, because what will happen if you don't is you'll have these big chunks in there and they're hard to get separated. But this is a great tasting cookie. And remember, we're doing it gluten-free. So if you wanted all of your gluten in there, then you would just use regular breadcrumbs, regular plain breadcrumbs, believe it or not. No flour in either of these recipes tonight. So we didn't have to sit there and play with trying to get the right combination of flour, which a lot of times is the problem, because you're trying to get the right combination of the flour and it's just not coming out quite like you want it to. And when I say right combination of flour, when I bake, I combine different flours. I will use, if the recipe calls for flour, then I will use coconut flour and almond flour and rice flour and tapioca flour. And I like tapioca flour because it's a very, very, very fine flour. And so that's what we're doing now. So now you'll see it get a little more tricky. If that mixed in. It will mix in. It just takes a little. My mom's never, like, we don't soften it or anything like that. So you just put it in like I just did. Cut it up, little break it into little chunks. And it slowly gets mixed in. As you can see, too. That's so good to see you guys. Let's speed it up a little bit. Okay, that's pretty much, push it down a little more. Around a little. Once you start adding your breadcrumbs too, that makes a difference. Usually I use my KitchenAid, but I wanted to go ahead and make sure that I could do that. Okay, now you can see the texture of it. It's almost like lumpy mashed potatoes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take 3/4 to a whole cup of breadcrumbs And again, these are gluten-free breadcrumbs. So we're going to start, we're going to put 3/4 in first and see how it comes out. Because right now we've got a shorter recipe for this, so we don't want too much in there. One time I made these one year. So funny. I made them. Here we go. Oh my gosh, you can smell the almond in it. Oh, it smells so good. If you like almond and you like almond cookies, anything with almond extract, anything like that, this is a fabulous recipe. The most time-consuming part is just this part putting together. You do have to put, we're going to use a whole cup. You do have to go ahead and put the mixture in the refrigerator for 2 hours and let it just firm up. Anyway, a couple of years ago, I was just had a lot on my mind, had a lot going on, and I was making these. My parents were actually in Texas visiting my brothers for the holiday, and I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't make the almond cookies. I need to make the almond cookies. I made the almond cookies, right? And I put them in the fridge, and I took them out. I'm like, these don't seem right. Like there's something wrong with them. I put them in my little balls, rolled them in my balls, the little balls, because that's what you do. You roll them in little balls. And I'm talking to my sister-in-law. I'm like, I just don't understand that. She said, well, did you bake them? I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to bake them. So you do have to bake them. They only take like 5 minutes to bake once you do bake them. And of course, so we're going to put this in the refrigerator. It sits for 2 hours. Then once it sets up, you take it out and you roll your balls. You roll your balls. Okay, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle balls. Of course I have one. That I did earlier today. And I've been cooking all day today, right? So what we do is put all of your pans and they all come out of the top. What we do is take your baking sheet. You can go ahead if you want to and put a little bit of Crisco on it. If you want to do that. And that's where the Crisco in the refrigerator comes in very handy. So you take this because the almond paste cookies are very sugary. And so they will stick. And even though this is a non-stick pan, I still want to make sure that they're not sticking too much because I have a lot more baking to do and I don't want to ruin this baking sheet. So, on there, corners. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to wash our hands. Okay, so we're going to take the cookies, and you see now it's nice and firm. And you just form them into little balls. That's all you do. You form them into little balls. And then what I do, one step more, is I go ahead, hey, Sheilyn, is I also push them down generally into a thumbprint. Just a little one, because I like to put cherries, these little dried cherries on them. You know, the dried fruit that you can get, and I use cherries. You don't have to put anything. They're so tasty. You really don't have to put anything, but if you want to, that's a good little trick. And what I was going to also do tonight was make a chocolate ganache. So they would be like a chocolate covered cherry sitting on the, or sitting in the almond cookie, the top of the almond cookie. So I thought that would just be a nice little treat for everybody. I'll be taking some to work for everybody to have. You got to share the love, right? Put those here. We'll roll out a couple of more. And then those would just, like I said, those go into the oven at 350 for maybe 5 minutes. You definitely want to watch them because they don't take long at all to cook. This, go. And that's it, we got that there. So you fill this up, toss in the oven, 5 minutes, you're good to go. And so it happens, I have some, of course, already made right here. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a chocolate ganache, and we can fill these with the cherry and put the chocolate ganache on top. So let's do that really quick. I have my pan right here, and we're going to get some more chocolate morsels. You can use, again, any chocolate morsels that you want. Now, what you're going to do actually is it's 1 cup of chocolate morsels. Here we go. So 1 cup of chocolate morsels. Put those in whatever pan you're using. And then 1 teaspoon, not a tablespoon, 1 teaspoon of your Crisco. Average. We're going to measure this out because, as you know, baking is so much more precise. I'm going to measure this out and make sure that I don't have more than 1. Well, that's a tablespoon. So I'm going to cut this in half. Put that in there. And then we're going to heat this on the stove, and this doesn't take long either. Get that going. And that will be that. So it's a quick show tonight. So next time what I wanted to do was cook with my mom, bake with my mom actually. Every year we make something called cinnamon Crescent cookies, and everybody loves them. They're a lot of work to do, but we're going to go ahead and do those. Part of the whole scheme of all of it is that you have to keep the dough for many of these cookies, which are traditional cookies that I grew up with in our Italian family making. You have to keep the dough cold. So you have to keep the dough in the refrigerator. The dough is a sour cream based dough. And so you roll that out, and then you also whip up your egg whites like we did tonight. And then you brush the dough with the egg whites. Then you've already made up your cinnamon sugar sprinkle that you're going to sprinkle on the cinnamon on the dough. You do that. And the fun part is, remember I said cinnamon crescents, right? You have to cut them into slices that you can roll into cinnamon crescents. So it takes a little bit, it takes a little while. Let's go ahead and see how these are cooking here. Oh, they're coming really nicely. Let's get this one going a little faster. And I want to show you too. So this is what I do with the almond cookies, is I go ahead and I put these cherries in them. So I buy the cherries. They're the dried cherries, like the dried fruit. They come really good and they're a nice little taste to them. So I usually pop that right in there. What we're going to do tonight is put a little bit of chocolate on it too. So we'll see how that will pretty that up very nicely. Now you could do this in the microwave if you wanted to. I don't generally do it in the microwave, but you can. You remember 1 teaspoon of the Crisco for 1 cup of chocolate morsels. They also have the melting chocolate that you can buy as well, and that works out well too. Very nice. And none of these things take long. That's the great thing about a lot of these recipes is they don't take long. What I do at the end, like the last week of Christmas, how nicely that has turned into a nice velvety chocolate that we can spread. We can put on, drizzle onto our cookies. We're going to do that. So we're going to take some of these cookies right now, and we're going to put little cherries in them. And then we're going to drizzle that on the cherry. And then we have a chocolate covered cherry on top, basically, of our cookie, our almond cookie. This. And what I do a lot of times for Christmas gifts for people is not necessarily the cookies. I mean, whoever wants cookies gets to, I'm more than happy to give them cookies. But what I like to do is I like to bake cupcakes. And I do bake gluten-free cupcakes right before Christmas Eve. So when we have any guests for Christmas Eve that are coming, I go ahead and I give them that as a gift. So real quick, I forgot to take my little pixie stick of our probiotic, and I don't want to miss that, especially this time of year. We're so busy, and as we know, probiotics are so good for us and our digestive health as well as everything else. But you know what else is really great about this probiotic, and I love it? It comes in individual packs, which is awesome, especially if you're traveling. And it's literally like a pixie stick. So you just take it, and that's it. And it's like a pixie stick. Okay, so we have our almond cookies done. Yay. And now, others cooking, but this is what it comes out looking like. See that? Isn't that fantastic? So you can see the caramelization of the sweetened condensed milk around the edges. So you would just cut this into squares, plate it up, and then there's your cookie. There's one of your cookies anyway for the holidays. Get that out and plate it up too. Actually, I'll put these here. Get a little pimple on here. That's how easy. Baking's not that hard. And baking gluten-free definitely isn't that hard. So this is what it looks like. Check it out. Chocolate. Look at that chocolate goodness. It's just so wonderful. Oh, looks great. My son always likes the end pieces because they're crispy. Look at the crust on it. This is the breadcrumbs. This is breadcrumbs with butter. That's it. So whenever you have a recipe that calls for graham crackers and you can't find gluten-free graham crackers, substitute with gluten-free plain breadcrumbs. Don't use the seasoned ones. It'll definitely have a different taste. That's it. Okay, so 2 cookies recipes down for tonight. Yes, these do freeze well, and I like to freeze things. So everyone have a great rest of your weekend. Bon appetit and ciao. We will see you soon.